Hey, Brittany.
Hi, Cassie.
Hey, Snarkers. Welcome back to the Snarking Lot. Well, here we are, Brittany. This is a monumental episode. I'm going to ask you quickly how you're feeling before we say why it's a monumental episode. How you
I'm
doing?
feeling curious since it's a monumental episode as to the direction of where everything is going to go here.
I love the term
How about
curious.
you?
I'm so excited. We are so excited, and I feel like some of our dear friends from our former circles of childhood are going to really enjoy this episode because we have our first guest, Amanda. She has been an influential educator in our K-12 experience, Brittany in particular, and an educator that we now will always call her Miss Mayo in our minds, probably, or Mayo, but we now get to call her Amanda. We're going to let that roll off the tongue. So, Amanda, welcome to the Snarking Lot and thank you for joining us. How are you feeling about getting the prestigious award of being the first guest?
Well, thank you for having me. I feel truly honored to be your first guest, and I'm definitely feeling sentimental right now because I think there's nothing that a teacher loves more than to see their students go on and be successful and grow up happy and healthy, and to be able to sit and talk with you now in your adult lives, that means a great deal. That means an amazing amount. So thank you.
Well, shucks, as I sometimes say and joke, but thank you. Again, we just had a wonderful time reconnecting for during a little prep introduction, right? As we call it, Brittany, preppy prep. And we
Yep.
feel the same. It's wonderful to talk with you. We've done a little electronic communication over time, but getting to chat with you again is fantastic. So, with that said, would you like to give our guests a little rundown on who you are, your story as you're comfortable, just so they understand why we've invited you to this particular episode?
Sure. So I've been in education now for 20 years. I started out the first 7 years as a high school history and social studies teacher, and had the benefit of getting to see you too in your high school days, and work with an amazing group of teachers and an amazing kids and families. Ended up getting my master's in admin and policy and going on to become a charter school director for the Mandarin immersion program, which is kind of funny because I don't speak Mandarin, but whole new experience there, especially working with little kids and having zero experience before that working with or even really being with little kids. And then getting a job later on, which I've been at for the past 10 years as an elementary principal for K-6 kiddos in a school that is economically, socially, you name it, diverse. And working again, another great group of educators, great kids, great families. But it's been an interesting ride. And now that ride is actually about to come to an end because I'm going to take a little break from education and flex my policy muscle a little bit more, I hope, uh, and going to work for a branch of the state government. So, bit of a wild ride. And of course, as some of my students know, before I ever was in education, I got to spend a little time in funeral service, which kind of gives you a very rounded perspective on life. So, yeah, that's how I got here.
Wow. That's part of why we say you're so cool, is because of all of those things, the very unique journey you've had, and just add in there at the end. Oh, and by the way, I started in funeral service. That's, you know, quite unique. Unique. Brittany, would you like to introduce our mental health check? As our current listeners know, and we've explained, we always do a mental health check because we're passionate about mental health access and mental health in general. Should we start with you again, Brittany, as we always do? How are you doing?
Sure. Um, I'm okay. There's a lot going on these days. So I think I keep saying it, said the last 2 times, just existing in a time-space continuum, much like the Doctor and Doctor Who. So what about you, Cassie?
I'm feeling similar to usual, just chugging along, doing the whole millennial career work life thing, hosting a podcast now, but just doing okay. Did get that exercise I talked about last time, so that was good.
Good.
But we do want to qualify where we're at in time when we're recording this episode, because we're going to invite Amanda into the mental health check, but we do want to note that we are recording this a day after the active shooter incident that took place at the Mount Horeb School District, which is close to where we grew up and this close to the school district where we were educated. So Amanda, we'll let you take it from here on a general mental health check and just some thoughts on that timely subject, if you're willing.
Sure. May is usually a pretty stressful month if you work in education, because it's when a lot of our routine gets tossed out the window because we're winding down, and so we're doing testing, and all of a sudden there's field trips, and some of our kiddos who are a little stressed about realizing they're going to be away from their safe place for the next coming months, they kind of remind us how much they need us. So May tends to be a bit of a pins and needles month in that regard, because you just want everybody to get through it. And then thinking about what happened in Mount Horeb and realizing that we have kids and teachers and family members hurting in this part of our state down there, because it's unthinkable, and it's the thing that we want to stop at all costs. And it's just it's sobering. It makes you grateful about so many things, but sometimes it reinforces so many other fears that you have in the back of your head every day. And just really wishing everybody in that community right now strength and healing.
Yeah, feeling very similar about sending, and I don't know that I always like this term, but good energy that way, because it's been challenging to just even access the information, I think, on social media and see how everyone who has children and family and just connected to it is, it's gonna be a road. So thank you for sharing. We came into this episode with a plan and a reason why Amanda is our guest, so that we decided we thought we should talk about something entitled Good Girls, The Journey of Perfectionist Kids. So, with that said, Brittany and I think, looking at you, Brittany, I think we've reflected quite a bit, both seriously and in joking form, about the pressure to do well that we both felt, both in anything we were doing, academics, extracurriculars, and just, life in general. I think we probably didn't give educators like you too much trouble, Amanda, in terms of the
Oh,
behavior as well. Good
none,
kids.
actually. No, you didn't.
She's
So what
being
were
paid
your
to say that.
observations? What is that, Brittany?
She's being paid to say that. Very good.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's
Good.
being paid in future trophies and candy
That's
to say
Yes.
that nice stuff.
your ad
So,
money, ad revenue.
yeah, sponsorships, as we keep saying as well. So, what were your observations of us? And I will qualify that I did not have you as a teacher, but wish I had. But you still kind of commanded that, like, respect, I would say. So I regretted that I didn't have the opportunity to have you as a direct educator, but your presence in the school was definitely known. But what were your observations of Brittany, us, just from that perspective?
I I think what kind of stood out was that you both were a little bit more mature than the average high schooler, kind of old souls. And yet, the more I got to know you later and see you kind of come out of your shells and get a little goofy in things like Spanish class and whatnot, which I didn't even teach, that somehow got roped into some of the antics of, see that there was still this, you know, still a couple of teenage kids who still were ready to have some fun, but definitely you could tell you were both very driven. And there were times where, and Brittany and I, discussed this briefly before the show, where you might have mentioned to your parents, like, she all right, she seems very serious. And just kind of, so quiet, which I come to find out was, later on was a very, very wrong assessment of you.
Depends on the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah, you may not have much to say all the time, but when you do have something to say, it's well worth listening to.
Tell that to some of my former workplace. Whoops, spicy.
Oh,
Spicy.
Oh, it's the snarking lot has
You
started.
need a little horn that you can beep whenever you hit the snark.
There we go. Brittany
Mhm.
We're
likes
a
it when
whole
I lean into the mic, so I could emphasize if I lean in. Anyway,
we're a hole into the table with that one.
Yeah.
Brittany, so she noted before, and she, again, because she's being paid, she graciously didn't call us tightly wound in her current assessment that she just did. But that would be a fair assessment. Tightly wound,
Yes,
you know.
very driven. It was clear you had plans. I don't mean that in a nefarious way. It was just clear you had a direction and you had momentum, and you weren't real keen on being deviated from it. Um, and I think at times you could kind of see too, where you'd almost look at your peers like, oh, they're a little exhausting because I got stuff to do. and and that's all right, by the way. I don't, but you could definitely see that you two had very, very pinpoint focus.
Yes. Now, Brittany, did you want to share that story you shared with me that we talked about a little bit about your very first foray into the Amanda classroom?
The mayonnator, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a junior, starting, and so Mayo was my history teacher. And that year, or that semester, um, so it's first semester of the year. Mayo and I figured out because I thought so, and she confirmed it. So there were 8 hours in a day. The first hour, Mayo had a study hall, or kind of like an open class. And so then second hour is my junior class comes rolling in the door. So this is like her first official kicking off for the school year, first time in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And I remember, we just, to make it easy to start to learn everybody, did the whole, arrange snake through the rows, alphabetically by your last name. And so I was also at the front of the second row. So I got to be up close and personal in the orbit, in the aura, see it up close. But yeah, I can kind of remember it was so I will also preface this by saying it was after gym class. A lot of us had that first hour. So poor Mayonator is subjected to a bunch of juniors, some, well, I would say, with varying degrees of grasps of hygiene and
Mm-hmm.
bathing. Also riled up from said gym class, awake. Whereas if probably we had first hour with her, she might have gotten a little bit easier. But no, I can remember just coming in, taking my seat, and I knew it was going to be a new teacher. I liked history. I still like history. So I always like history was always one of my favorite classes, and so I was excited to get going. And so I remember, Mayo does her introductions and kind of starting to lay out the expectations. And I'm like, oh, good, here we go. I like this vibe. And she, within the first 2 minutes, proceeds to say that, you and we're all going to be together for the next 9 months, to which one of my classmates just pointed out, quote, well, so it's kind of like we're having a baby together. And that really broke, I think, any kind of weird tension, but any kind of like new person, new teacher, new kids vibes. I remember Mayo just paused and bent over and started laughing. The rest of us burst out laughing, and we went from there. And
Yeah.
no, I always enjoyed it. I learned citations on my papers. Like I believe I might still hold the record for like 50 some citations for like one of my shorter papers on something. But
I think your citation page was longer than the paper itself.
yeah, and I heard it was used in other classes, and I'm like, oh no, for it. But no, I remember I really liked it. It was fun. And again, like I thought you did a really good job, especially with it being your first year with a whole new district full of kids to have to learn, and just a different, younger vibe and energy. So those are my memories. I do remember too. So I only had Mayo for junior history, and then was there senior year too, or did we?
I trying to think if my seminar on historic research was at that point. I don't think that got approved till later, but I had psych, global issues, sociology.
Yeah. I remember I was so mad because those got added. I think maybe a couple of them were added, and I had conflicts, I think, with me with band and with Spanish and whatever. And I was like, man, I can't do it. But I'll never forget being in personal finance my senior year, and we stayed in there longer because all the underclassmen were having meetings because they were expanding all the electives. And I know you were getting a bunch of them and all that, and I in-house AP classes, and I'm like, I was 1 year younger. I could have gotten like, I think you were teaching sociology in some of these, which ended up being one of my majors in college. And I'm like, this, like, that would have been incredible. So I really regret that I didn't get to have more classes with you. And, I think especially as we
Likewise.
got into like the political part, that would have been interesting. That would have been fun, but no, nothing but good memories.
Good. That makes me happy to hear.
Yeah.
I love hearing about this, Brittany. But Brittany, do you wanna share then, like, as you're comfortable? Because again, the journey of perfectionist kids, right? So what would you characterize as your drivers? Like both like, balance of internal versus external factors that drove your, as she politely puts it, our drive, whatever you want to call it.
The hamster wheel that never
The
stops
hamster wheel.
spinning. Um, I think it was definitely my parents. I mean, it was just kind of expected. Not in the way of like, well, you're so great and better than everyone else, but just no, you better go out there and like do whatever it takes legally to do it and do the best you can, and be one of the best, or just at least do it the
Yeah.
best you can. So I think it was just any repercussions of where it wouldn't be that. And just like, okay, like I gotta do it. Or I think it's really come into play, and I know we'll get into this as we've aged, with it, just like I like efficiency, I don't like inefficiency. And that really bugs me. So maybe I should have been an engineer. I don't know.
Maybe.
But just yeah, or just like we're in it, I gotta be in here, fine, let's just get it done. Let's just do it. So I would definitely say my parents were probably my driver
Yeah.
for it. I don't know too, being what I know about you, Cassie, but being the oldest. Also,
Oh
you're
yeah,
the first.
good point.
I mean, we're perfect, but yet they said that, they make all their mistakes with the first one. So, um, I mean, I know they definitely still pushed like my brothers too, but I think they kind of maybe let up, or I learned later on, like it wasn't the worst thing if, it was like an A instead of an A plus.
Oh,
Or
how
yeah.
dare
And then
you?
like a few years ago, we had like the acknowledgement finally of like, oh, maybe we did push you kind of hard. And I'm like, oh, luckily I overcompensated. Lucky you. God.
I know, right? I
Who
know,
needs
I
mental health and depression and anxiety? It's fine. It's good. I'm thriving.
right.
Ish.
Yeah, never been big on group projects. That's the other thing that I think Brittany and I are kindred spirits over, of like we just rather do things ourselves. Like let's just be real. Not that we don't view ourselves as, not that we aren't collaborative people, but that was always like the, you get an assignment, oh please don't let it be a group project. Please just let it be something I can do myself, you know?
I would sometimes ask, I don't know if I ever asked you, but I would sometimes ask, like, can I just be a group by myself and just do it all?
Yeah, I recall that.
Mostly because I was just like, because I can just sit down and just get it done and be done. It was never like, oh, I don't like anybody else. I'm totally fine with the kids, other kids. And like, again, it's moved through college, like more of like, don't mess your part up. Like our grades are all riding on this, like keep your part up, or just like equal work. But I think it was born out of some earlier days of,
Yeah.
you're like going to get done and it turns out some bunch of the people said they like didn't end up doing what they said they were going to do. And now you're scrambling to fix it, make it work, which again is in no way translated to the rest of my life or our lives, Cassie and I. No,
No,
like,
not at all.
no way, no.
Not at all.
So yeah, I think it was more just like I have to just can I just like do it all, and yeah, it's definitely transferred into work too, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I would say
times.
my perfectionist students were really good in social studies at taking the social out of the social studies and missing at times the bigger picture because it really was this focus on, well, this is the objective, this is the deliverable, and I need this
Yep.
done. I'd like it done now. I don't really care to have other people's dirty fingerprints on it that don't meet my standards. So can I just work alone? And sometimes we would say, well, yeah, because honestly, when you'd see that cause anxiety for kids, you'd say, well, yeah, because you know what? When you get to be an adult, there are jobs that you can choose where you really don't have to work a lot with other people. And that's okay. But there were times where I'd be like, no, we need to know that you have like a baseline skill at this in tolerating your fellow man and what you view as their shortcomings in your continual pursuit of either making sure that you don't mess up because you're so anxious that you might, or you being the best means something to you for another reason.
Yeah. I'm laughing because it's like that what I hear in my head is that you have a baseline level of like teamwork in you. Like you have a baseline level of being to like collaborate with other human beings,
Just
you
want
know?
you to want to know that we're not asking you to play great with others, but we don't know that you can play well with others. You know,
There
and
you go.
yeah, and I tell you what, one of the hardest things to explain, we always say that, well, we want all our children to all like each other. Look, that's not a skill most adults practice. Most of us are not very, we just don't automatically universally like everybody and accept being paired or partnered up with people that we don't approve of for whatever reason or don't prefer. But we will put kids in that situation over and over and over again. Um, and there's times where I'll say, no, you know what? It's okay for a child to learn that they can be discerning at times. They just can't be unkind or disrespectful or hurtful in doing so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, yeah, when I see perfectionism uh, in group work and I think about that and how that used to play out, I knew every time I'd say, so we're going to group you in threes and fours, that there would be some kids that are like, oh, okay, and other kids are like, yes, maybe I'll just get to be the note taker. And then there would be the other kids that would be like, no, no, don't
Mm-mm.
do this to me. Why do you hate me? It's like, I don't hate you. I
Don't
just
they
want you to
swear?
try.
No. Well, Brittany, you in particular knew my mother really, really well. So to answer your question, right? Like mine came largely from my mother. Like I think there's no way that it isn't to be blamed on my mom. Miss you, mom. Um, you know, I think one of my earliest memories, and I find it fascinating, Amanda, now that you're in, working with young kiddos, as you say, like one of my earliest memories is coming home with like study materials for like a second or third grade spelling test, probably. I mean, I'm young and it's a spelling test the next day. And it was like, and again, this is gonna make my mom sound harsh, which she was not. Brittany, you know this, you can concur. But I will be disappointed in you if you don't get 100%, was like basically what she said, right? To like a 7 or 8 year old. So I think some of those like early experiences of like expectations of like things that were, I mean, I was a good speller. I could probably accomplish that no problem. But you bring up anxiety, kind of like young development of anxiety around academic performance. very early. Um, and then of course there was also the financial factor. Like my mom very much wanted me to be valedictorian so that I would get the scholarship that you get for going to a state school. So there was a little bit of like working class financial benefit mixed in there of like, it would be really great if you got that $2,500 a year, Cass, that kind of thing. So, and that was okay in the sense of like, good goal to make sure you can financially support yourself going to college. But it's mom's fault, 100%. Brittany and I, we would agree that our parents had influence in our perfectionism, but also briefly, like we were saying in our prep session, I also wouldn't trade it because I'd rather be driven and a little bit anxious and trying to do well than the opposite. So like I'm happy about it in reflection, but it totally does play out in work settings today yet as well. Brittany, I'm laughing because you know how it can go. What appears what you're calling driven can also be taken as, you're kind of headstrong or you're a little much, that can happen at times.
And I think those are good things. I can remember, from high school on being that person that always had a plan, that had a target. And I can also remember the very few times in my life where I didn't necessarily have some sort of set target, feeling very much adrift. And being a naturally anxious person myself, having and having that just compound that. So I think being goal orientated, being driven, those are good things. Um, it's when we do it to the point of we're almost afraid to take a risk and do anything but what that goal is, or we start to approach the goal and we realize we're close and this might be where we could lose it and we self-sabotage. I see that happen too. um, I would not I see perfectionism in students, and I see it from a young age. What's interesting is while I would consider myself someone who focused on achievement for myself and for others, I wouldn't consider myself a perfectionist. I'm very much a type B person. And which aren't people who are normally associated with having anxiety, right? Because they think those people let everything go. Well, actually, we get anxious because we let everything go. But when I see that perfectionism welling up, especially in young people, um, and I see the anxiety that it can cause, or I see that anxiety even start to blend into depression because they're in a constant state of, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Is this good enough? Um, it, it's heartbreaking because what you really want is for them to see just how great they are right here, right now, and how in their most basic, purest form, without having to be the best, without having to attain. But that, no matter what mirror you hold up, if that doesn't seem to resonate, they have to really have a lot of help and guidance in letting those things go, especially when it's ingrained in them from a young age, especially when there are reinforcers along the way that, weren't really in their control. And oftentimes we're not deliberate. I don't know a lot of deliberately high pressure parents. It just comes, I think, from that natural desire of wanting the best for your child. I don't know a lot of parents who deliberately put their kids in this state of panicked fight or flight for their whole life. But does it still happen without it being deliberate? Yeah, sure.
Hmm.
I'm going to pause for 1 second and plug in my laptop.
Okay.
Take a commercial break.
We are on a commercial break. Brittany, this is that point where we start plugging all the different sponsorship opportunities that we talk about all the time right now, right? What do we got today?
3, 2, 1. Zzz.
Mm, I know. I was just pinging Quick Trip on social media earlier this evening about about their new brats and brat buns. So at some point we should probably invite Quick Trip and it's definitely,
I think we,
you know.
I think we can get 2 for 1 decent sandwiches out of the mix here.
Didn't see anything behind it. There we go. All righty. There we go. I'm not in dress pants. I'm in shorts. Which I know is always that is a decision to make that you are not going to have to stand up at any point. It's a gamble. That's taking risks. Let's go on to risk taking and the importance of that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You were just talking about people not wanting to take risks.
I was, and I live
Yeah,
on the edge. I
it's
podcast
connected.
about proper trousers.
So I'm curious, you're kind of alluding to this. What is what do you think the line is between, or is there a line? How would you describe it as an educator between like not enough desire, not enough kind of effort or desire to do well versus taking it too far, and like what's innate in children versus what is external factors that contribute to this.
I think a lot of that has to do with whether it's intrinsic motivation or extrinsic motivation. So whether it's just something that's inside of them, that they have this passion to do something, it speaks to them, it resonates with them, and I see, you two both really enjoyed running and track. I do see this with runners a lot, where they have this desire for self-improvement. I see it with golfers too, where you're really beating yourself, right? You're playing against yourself and you're looking for that growth piece. And that's that great intrinsic piece. Can that get carried too far? Sure. Anybody can become obsessed and stop doing something because they love it, and now that it's just because they're chasing whatever high goal they put in their head, right? But I find that for a lot of our perfectionists that I see in education, and I'm not an expert, I'm just, this is just what I see anecdotally, you know, some of that can come more extrinsically, and I think as our society continues to evolve to where every child has to be in X amount of sports and everything needs to be, we have to be the best. We have to be the best. I think parents have an amazing amount of pressure on them to not make mistakes with their children, and that whether they want their children to see that pressure that's on them or not, kids are so smart. They are emotional sponges. They pick up on the energy that we have. They pick up on the fears and the anxieties that we have. And what do they want to do? They want to make us happy. They just do. Um, so sometimes you can see that, that unhealthy side coming a little bit more from those extrinsic factors. Um, and so now it's not about, I just have high drive, I'm really self-motivated, I have this growth mindset, I'm always looking to see what I can do just a little bit better. I like to see how much more every time I can just get a little bit, you know to the best part of whatever it is about me. And instead it's more about seeking approval. And again, I'm not an expert, I just know what I see when I'm working with, at this point now, over 20 years, kids ages 5 to 19, which is a pretty big array of ages, and it looks different at every age. But there's a point where it stops being about satisfying yourself and celebrating your growth and turns into this need to have to perform, and this fear of what will happen if you don't. And I think that maybe is another really good indicator, is when you can't shake it off that it wasn't your best day. And now you're afraid to ever do whatever it was you were doing again.
I think too, I don't know. There's probably some of that as kids or as we got older as to teenagers. I don't know about as like elementary school kids, but I think it definitely, especially now in life, as more stuff happens. I think too, it's the sense of control, because there is so much in life you cannot control, that when you have something in front of you, like a grade in a class, or if you do more of an individual sport, or I don't know, music, whatever interest, whatever thing you have in front of you, it's like, oh, finally, this is something where if I can just do it enough, I'll know the outcome of it, or I can
Mhm.
control, or I have a lot more control over it. I know something can always happen, but like I have a lot more control over this and this outcome than other things in life too. And so I think that's, especially again, if you are anxious or OCD, or just if you're again one more a mix, like I think I'm a mix of type A and type B. It depends on the topic, it depends on the situation. Some stuff I'm like, I don't know why that's bothering people, like just let it, whatever. But then I'm like, well, but I've got my stuff over here that they would say the same thing about, or the stuff to me that is my, this is my, D-Day over here, like that they're not gonna understand. So I think, yeah, so I, like I said, especially again, maybe for those kids as they get up into maybe the teenage years with stuff, or things are going haywire somewhere else in their life, home or whatever. It's like too, you also now have this, what's supposed to be a hobby or school or whatever in front of you, and you're like, good, here, I can just do it directly and I can influence the outcome. I have control over it.
And, depending on what you start to become adverse to, if what you don't want is the thing that you love to be the thing that you start to hate, you start avoiding that thing in certain arenas, because you're now, whether you realize it or not, you become very protective of that, because either consciously or subconsciously you realize, I'm the kind of person that if I start to obsess about this too much, I'm not going to like it anymore. It's going to stop being that thing that brings me joy, and it's going to start bringing that it's going to start being that thing that brings me anxiety. And that's where you start to see people not taking risks. That's where you start to see people avoiding even things that there is a very good chance is going to bring them a lot of joy. But that fear of failure, or that fear of giving into that obsession, you know, that becomes that determining factor. And I worry about that a lot with kids. And then one of the reasons why I liked the school that we were all at together was that everybody did everything. You weren't getting cut from the basketball team. You weren't getting cut from drama. I mean, everybody was doing every activity, because one, there weren't enough children if they did it. The
Yeah.
only way that all these things were going to happen is if everybody did it. And because of that, nobody had to really feel like they were going to be the one getting laughed at, or the one that wasn't allowed to be part of it. It wasn't an environment that invited that kind of judgment of, well, if you're good, you can do this, but if you're not, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to represent our school in this activity. And so you got to see kids experiment with things that, I'm guessing, if they were in a larger situation where there was the chance that they were not going to be the one to get picked, or they were going to have to face that walking up and seeing whether their name's on the roster or not, I'm guessing they wouldn't even try. And I see that in larger districts, where kids will stop doing things that they love at a very early age. And I'll ask their parents, hey, is so and so still partaking in whatever the activity is? And they'll say, well, they decided now they're going to really focus in on this, because that's what they think they have the most chance at being on the team of. And I'll think, wow, I know how much they were so excited about this other thing, but they felt like they had to make a decision. And what I really did love about where we were at was that was not something that really our students had to worry about on such a high level.
Well, I don't know if it's too from a bigger district. Like I think nowadays, think about like my colleagues or other friends who have kids that are doing it. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching, because again, like you said, they're like, there's the pressure of like, my kid has to be in the gifted and talented or go to this exact
Mhm.
preschool because they're going to start 2K. That's now a thing in some places. And I'm like, they're high functioning vegetables. What are you doing in 2K? Like, like let
They're
them, good
not
Lord.
vegetables, Brittany.
Well, all right,
Brittany.
houseplants. Like I've been in daycares, like doing
They're
stuff for work.
they're
I have
they're
seen
they're
the
still
two.
learning how to do, as I said.
Yes. And I'm like, what thing other than like what daycare? Like what are they gonna walk out? What are you thinking they're gonna do? Like Pythagorean theorem coming out of that? Like I don't get it. But then also I see like with activities, or I feel like now with I'll take sports as an example, sports starting younger and younger. And it's like you almost have to specialize. You have to decide at 3, 4, 5 years old, the kids just be like, what's my sport that I'm gonna do all the way through? And I'm like, shouldn't this be where they could get to do all of them or try them? Like, yeah, there'll maybe some that already know they want to do this. They naturally excel in something. And so they're like, all right, that's it. But I'm like, well, what if at like 8 years old, they want to go try this other thing because they're now too old and they're going to be with other kids, or now they're not considered for it because they're not as good, or well, no, you're too old to come in and to try this. And I'm like, this, I don't know, I would like being a kid
Mhm.
right now. Like I don't
It doesn't
it
seem to have the same wonder to it, does it?
No, because you have to. I'm like, I don't know what 3 or 4 or 5. Like, if you would have told me, and granted, we didn't have as many sports at a smaller school or many activities as
Yeah.
again, people maybe went to college with that had it, or like, or now, in some of these schools where like they'll say a thing and I'm like, what's that? Or I have to look it up because I'm like, I've never heard of that club, but good for you for having it. But it's like you have to, yeah, pick your thing. Are you going to be in the theater? Are you going to be the theater kid? Are you going to be the athlete? Are you going to be in music? And that's, because it's all time consuming, like that's your thing. And you can't do multi-level activities, or be a multi-talented person, or at least like you said, try it, different
Yeah.
things. Like, yeah, I have to declare at 5 years old, soccer's my sport. And God forbid if I want to go try golf or if I want to go try baseball or something further down the line, because I'm not, no, nope, you decided that several years ago. Like, nope, you can't do it. And it's just like, that's interesting. Like that's an approach.
And you see that carry over into adulthood, and you'll say to somebody, "Oh, do you golf?" And if you're me, the first thing you say is, "Yeah, I'm terrible at it, but I do it," because you want people to know right away, you know, I don't value my my level of performance because I want to give you the out if you do to not play with me or make my life feel worse because of it, right? Or we'll have people that will say, I don't do that anymore because I'm not good at it. I don't do it anymore because, and that breaks my heart on so many levels because I think the older we get, the more we should still be doing things. I was joking with the two of you about how my new passion is grilling. Okay, it sounds silly, but look, when I was younger, I was told that I was not very domesticated. I was told that I was a terrible cook. My first spouse was the cook of the family. I didn't do a single thing. It's taken a lot of courage on my part to say, I might be really bad at this, but I'm going to try it. And I'd like to say, what's the worst that can happen? No one's going to die. With food, that could actually happen. It's true. But by and large, I'm going to take that risk. And I'm not going to serve you blowfish, but I'm going to take that risk of, I'm going to burn something on the grill. I'm going to make this roux that I don't even know what this is, but no one may want to touch it. And I might throw it in the trash, but I did it. And I'm going to try it again, even if I don't do well. And if we can't still do that at the ripe old age of 46, it's a good indication that we weren't feeling like we could do it at a younger age too.
That's
Um,
a great point. Brittany, what do I usually say about running? Right? Like running for like I joke it's like, well, it's running, air quotes. What I'm really doing is like fast walking that feels to me like I'm sprinting in a race, but it's that you talked about running before, just that, for your health, both for like your mental health and your physical health, like keeping and trying and doing those things. I agree so much that you can self-deprecate a lot, but at least you're trying. I like that. Like that.
And I think when we get people to the point where they're seeing themselves as, I don't see high achievers. I'm glad one of the articles that you kind of sent me pointed this out. I don't see high achievers and perfectionists as being synonymous. As a matter of fact, I've met a lot of people who are perfectionists who do not necessarily um, reach the pinnacle of their potential, because one, that anxiety can hold them back, right? They get kind of paralyzed by that thought of, maybe this isn't going to work out and I shouldn't try it. I see a lot of the more high achievers out there, whatever you view that as, by the way. I don't look at that in terms of what's in your bank account. I don't look at that in terms of the degrees that you have hanging on the wall. I mean, people who have set goals for themselves and have found ways to attain them. Those, to me, that's achievement, right? And whatever that goal is. And I think the people who are continually reaching and achieving are people who aren't afraid of what's going to happen when they don't hit that mark the first time. And they have a lot of resiliency and they have a lot of tenacity, and they're going to keep coming back and trying it again. And they're going to be vulnerable with other people and say, I don't think I'm doing a good job at this. Can you help me? That is a very difficult thing for somebody who is struggling with perfectionism to say, is, I need help. And it doesn't mean I need help on this project at work, and it doesn't necessarily mean I need help with some sort of fine motor skill. It could be, I need help with my emotional state. I need help being okay with me. So a lot of times you see that isolating behavior again, because now I have to admit to somebody, I'm not perfect.
So what you're saying is perfectionists have a hard time being vulnerable? Is that what you're
Oh, we
alluding
don't,
to?
perfectionists don't like that soft underbelly showing, because that's where you get hurt, right? We don't like this needs to stay covered. And if it means that we don't ever leave the ground and we lay flat on our bellies to do that, then we're okay. It's like, well, yeah, but you never got off the ground.
Yeah, but it's why I don't wear crop tops. No belly.
No belly. I mean,
Fawn gut
yeah.
here.
Yeah, and the older I get, the bigger my soft underbelly is. And so I can't hide it anyway, so I'm not going to pretend it's not there. I'm not going to pretend, I'm not who I am, and this is not how things are rolling some days. After I lost my first spouse, my staff that I worked with actually saw me a lot differently, because before then, I was so laser focused on all the things that we needed to do. And in a lot of ways, I don't think I let enough of my humanity show. And there's no way to hide your humanity after, you experience a major loss. People, you are never as vulnerable as you are at that point, you know. And so to be able to feel the freedom at that point of saying, look, I'll admit it. I don't have all the answers. I don't know always what I'm supposed to do. I'm anxious. I get scared. I sometimes feel sad, lonely, confused, all these things that I don't want to admit, because I'm supposed to be the leader, and the leader's supposed to exemplify, all these things that we're reaching for. I actually ended up having a much better relationship with my staff in the end. Because they got to feel comfortable telling me, the things about my leadership that were concerning to them. And I felt more receptive. And I definitely felt more comfortable asking for help and being a better leader. Um, and honestly, have always felt way better now asking for help since then. I Had I stayed in that mindset of I can't let people see, what my inner workings are and what my fears, what my anxieties, what all those things are, had I remained in that position and not modeled vulnerability, I think we would have a very distant relationship today. And I think it would have stopped a lot of people who since then felt more comfortable coming to me and saying, hey, by the way, I'm struggling with this and I need help, as opposed to I can't tell her that I don't feel confident in this because she's going to judge me. She's not going to accept that I'm not doing anything better than what she thinks this should be is the best. So there's a
Mm.
lot of freedom in vulnerability. There's a lot of strength and growth in vulnerability. And if we're so afraid to let that show, um, I think we only get weaker, we only get more isolated. Um, we we just keep shrinking.
I feel as though potentially you've revealed yourself as a big Brene Brown reader in this moment. I don't know if you've ever read a lot of Brene Brown, but I'm
We
going to
we have
accuse you
read
of it right
Brene
now.
Brown. We have read Brene Brown as a
Accuse
leadership team. I just read her stuff for the first time um, a couple months ago. Um, yeah, she's pretty good. It's not.
It's okay. She's okay. I'm giving her some feedback right now. Do you hear that, Brene?
She's all right. Yeah,
All right.
she speaks a lot of truth. She speaks a lot of truth, and vulnerability in leadership is definitely a big thing. But I think vulnerability in perfectionism is important. That people feel safe enough to not be the best. That people feel safe enough um, to mess up and get help. And sometimes, and this might sound crazy, but to walk away from something they don't want to do anymore. And how
Oh,
many kids are doing things that they don't want to do? Um, and
yeah.
that's a big one. And I'd like to know what you two think about that. And how many times you stayed locked in on a target?
Mm.
You know, how many times you should have let a MiG fly by instead of clocking
Brittany,
in on it and taking it and flying into the mountain valley with it.
Brittany, I'm looking straight at your Zoom square right now. Do you have thoughts?
Um, what? Well, probably a lot if it means it's not gonna hit somebody else. Like I tend to also do that. I think I've definitely walked away from stuff. I think it's probably a lot easier now. I definitely find it easier, especially like not being in a town where everyone knows me and knows everything about me. Cause I just that to me, I don't like I'll let you know what I want you to know. Like get back away. So I think too, like I wonder how I would have been if I'd have been in a bigger school. Like I think there still would have been some of the stuff, but like, you know, I know that when I'm in places where not a lot of people know me, I'm like, yeah, okay, who cares? I'm never gonna see them again. Or even if I am like, whatever, there's so many of us in here, it's gonna dilute it. They're not gonna remember me, like they're not gonna know it, or we're not gonna see everybody in the hall at the same time. So I really wonder what that would have been like for me if I'd have been in a different school. But yeah, no, I definitely have taken the deflected things or like taken the, yeah, ridden the empty into the mountain. Especially if I was like, fine, I'll take it for the team. Probably also because I'm like, "Ugh, no one else is stepping up. Got to be the fixer. Like that's 100% yes. What
Oh,
I did, have done or
fixer.
do, or I'm looking around and I'm like, fine, you all get to sit in your emotions, and that's great. I'll deal with them later in private in the shower, or asleep in bed, laying at night, staring in the dark. But like, fine, you know, I got to be the one right now to do it because nobody else can be trusted, or nobody else is stepping up. So fine. Like I definitely find myself doing that a lot of like, all right, you all can do it. I'm over here problem solving because no one else is doing it. Like, fine, I'll take it. I'll take the stress. I'll do it. And then I'll healthily push it down and just hide it somewhere. that I'm sure will in no way ever rise up on someone suspecting person or at an inconvenient time in the future.
No, no one's ever going to pay the price for that indirectly,
No, it's like the cheese tax.
ever.
No, you don't pay it. No, mm-mm.
Cheese tax.
I do like that saying, I'll let you sit in your emotions. I might pull that out at a couple meetings every now and then, like, okay, I can see some of you just right now need to sit in your
Which is
emotions,
totally fine. Everybody
which
needs
is
to,
fine.
everybody has
Yeah.
them. The
The rest
problem
of
is,
us
I
are
was
gonna
like,
move to
some of
this
you
side of
can't
the room,
compartmentalize,
yeah,
like
and
some of
address
them.
it.
But again, in another situation, like I'm like, man, I would like to be that person. And there's hopefully maybe somebody over there that would be like, what are you worried about this for? I'll fix it. But that doesn't seem to happen at
Mhm,
times. I think too, that's the natural
mhm.
inclination is like, I gotta be the fixer. Cause again, I gotta control it because I can control it because everything else is who knows what could happen. Who knows.
That seems to be an eldest sibling pattern I've noticed too. And you can tell I'm the youngest, right? Because everybody else went ahead of me and paved the way and made all the mistakes first and told me where all the landmines and booby traps were. And so I got to kind of hopscotch around. And my brother and sister remind me of that every chance they get. And and I acknowledge that. I really do. But we're in our late 40s now, and I still want to say that, it's you don't have to fix this. You don't have to take on this role. We're not we're not permanently these people forever. But yeah, I do find it interesting that you're both eldest children as well. And I don't want to say that only eldest children are perfectionists. That's not true. I can remember as the youngest, you know, wishing sometimes I had the pressure that my older siblings had. And because my parents were kind of getting tired by the time they got to me, and I didn't give them much of a run for their money anyway. I just kind of felt bad for them. They seemed like really nice people, so I didn't want to make much of a ruckus. But the quieter I am, the easier we'll all get out of this thing alive. But
Love it.
yeah, I do find that an interesting thing with some of the people who really, if they felt responsible for their siblings, if they felt responsible for people, um, even if they weren't, if they felt like they were almost sometimes even in an emotional caretaker in their family. Um, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they were the ones that were having to come home and help do chores and make dinner and everything, but maybe they were the pillar for the parent that was having a hard time. Maybe they were seeing their parents struggle with a relationship or something else, and so they wanted to be the shining star, the bright spot in some very dark times, the fixer, right? My success will make this better.
I'm just raising my hand. I'd like not if you're watching it on YouTube, you can see it, but that is I feel like you wrote a mini biography for me in that moment. That is like fixing, being a fixer, um, that anything is fixable. And I think you
Mm.
mentioned like, did you ever walk away from anything? Did you ever quit anything? I mean, I feel like that fixer, like you just have to keep going. Anything is good. You can work through anything. And I think Brittany knows I've quit very few things in my life, but one was high school basketball my senior year.
Same sophomore
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. And I just grew and details don't matter, but I just grew tired of it. Like it wasn't, we used a term on the last episode. It had been my favorite sport for a long time. And like the way it was functioning and what I was in, it just wasn't life giving anymore, as the term we used in the last podcast. It wasn't fun. And that was the only thing I ever did with also without telling my parents first. Crazy. I just waltzed in to the coach's office and said, it's been not really all that fun, but kind of fun. And like, I'm just going to part ways with it. I'm going to prepare for college and kind of be on my way, like you guys will be fine without me. But that was really hard for me to do. Like, despite it being like just high school basketball, looking back on it, it was like this big high pressure moment of like deep breath. I'm going to do this today kind of thing. Like, I'm going to quit the first thing I've ever quit. So I don't quit much, but I think in my older age, I definitely is like, if something isn't feeling right, you gotta be done with it, you know? Still a perfectionist and all the things, but
Well, and think about that article that we kind of read in advance. It talks a little bit about getting kids to one, quitting won't kill you. All right. And we're not talking about just letting people walk away from their commitments, right? If we made a commitment, we know it's important to carry through and follow through and be a reliable person. But when it's time to re-up and asking ourselves, is this really what I want to do? Not being afraid to say, I don't think so. And they call that more pruning, right? We're focusing our energy and our time on the things that mean the most of us. And I think another term that we could use for that, especially the older that we get, is that idea of curating, right? I'm keeping the things that I hold most precious. This year I read the book The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Something that I recommend everyone read, right? Which really talks about, in the Netherlands and in Sweden, it's very common that people really talk about, have more minimalization of the things in their life because they consider it a burden to leave a lot of stuff behind for your loved ones to deal with after you die. How functional, how efficient. You got to love that, Brittany, right?
Brittany.
So,
God, I hate clutter. God, I'm imagining the
yeah,
cleaning,
it's not great,
yes.
right? And so one of the things that it talks a lot about is how we curate. Okay, it's really narrowing down to the things that do have the most meaning or are the best physical artifact of that thing that we love the most. You know, look, I build Lego sets now as an adult, right? Late life hobby. When I'm 10 years from now, I'm not going to need all these things that I have laying around. I might keep the one or two that have the most emotional meaning to me or bring me the most satisfaction. But the rest I'm gonna let go and walk away from. We don't do enough curating in our lives about the things that bring us happiness. And we don't, so many of the things that we are holding on to or that we have decided to place so much importance on really do have more to do with other people's perception or what we think other people's perceptions and values are of how we should live our lives. And we start that at a young age when we think, I can't not be part of the POM squad. I can't not join debate or whatever it is. And we start to have that clutter early. And I'm not suggesting that anyone partake in the gentle art of Swedish death cleaning at the ripe old age of 15. But I think if we took that approach more, we'd feel less stress and we'd really start to ask ourselves, is this important to me because I like it and I love it? Or is this part of some other piece of baggage or hangup that I have that it's time for me to walk away from? Is this someone else's dream? Is this an ideal that I've forced myself into that is time for me to let go of? We start collecting that early.
Oh, so much agreement with that. And now I have a new book that I need to read,
Yeah, there's
obviously.
even a workbook that goes with it.
A workbook.
Yeah, I
Love
love,
a good book with a
like,
workbook.
there's a good workbook, and I have another one called I'm Dead Now What? Um, which is a nice organizing notebook for your loved ones after you've gone. So, little shameless plug there for,
Wow.
thinking ahead.
Brittany, I think this is a beautiful jumping off point to our traditional round robin area potentially. Since you brought up books, we'll probably just head right there. But I will say, Brittany's along for this ride. She's being very unwillingly pulled into this podcast thing perpetually now as a co-host, but we are serious about and we joke about. I mean, what we've joked about for a while, we just said, well, let's do it. like we said, let's start a podcast, our conversations, like, could this be a podcast? And then eventually it's just like, you know what? Here's the Band-Aid. We're just gonna rip it off. Let's do it. And we're having fun. Or as you can judge by Brittany's face, maybe I'm having way more fun than Brittany, but she's here and we're best friends. So, you know.
Well, I like to point out the unnerving fact that this was often what I would see looking out into my classroom when I'd be lecturing. And I think, I'm not, I hope she's okay. No, no, I don't.
Enough-ish. Enough for the purposes of what's going on.
I don't think
In a
she's enjoying
time-space
this.
continuum.
Yeah, enough that I can fake it. It's fine. Enough that everybody needs to know.
Fake it till you
Yeah,
make
no,
it.
everybody who knows me knows what's my favorite thing, vulnerability. Like,
Yes.
yeah, we're just cracking them one at a time here on the podcast. Like, no,
Right.
this is lovely.
These are the blooming onion layers we're peeling back of Brittany. She's never eaten a blooming onion from Outback Steakhouse. I know, right? But just picture we're
Peel the
peeling back
onion.
Brittany's
Peel
layers.
that onion. Get to what's,
There's too many layers.
there's really just
This
more
is like
onion
that part in
in it.
Shrek. What is it? Like, who says it to who? Is it Shrek to Donkey or Donkey to Shrek? I forget, which is really bad. But one says but like layers. Yeah, no, I have there's so many. It's like that
It's not.
Princess and the Pea with like the 50 mattresses on top of the thing. Like, no, you're going for no one's ever getting to the core. That's by design.
That's by design. That's all
Try to
we
Being
hug her.
vulnerable and admitting that. Look at that.
Try to give her a hug and see what happens. You can get punched in the boob if you aren't careful.
Not a
So,
hugger, huh?
yep, not a real big
If there's a
hugger.
point, sure. If not,
What do you mean?
if I have to comfort somebody, yes. But like to get chased around being touched, ew, no.
Better hug than a gratuitous hug.
Oh.
Just a hug for the sake of hugging.
I will pay people to not hug me.
You go have
My
your
red
emotions
light
over
district
there.
is me. My red light district is me paying people to stay the hell away from me. Like in my world, that's go away.
Social distancing was your
Oh,
baby.
I was like only
Yeah.
6 feet. Get away. Like, do not crowd me at the register. Thank you. Get away from me.
Thank you.
Couple
Yeah,
steps.
the pandemic was Brittany's favorite.
Well, if Brittany, if you would like, wherever you're working now, if you'd like me to come in and at any point talk with your team about the importance of minding bubble space
Oh,
and
it's fine. I'm
respecting.
fully remote now, so that my
Oh,
goal has been
okay.
achieved.
We'll have to start exploring the topic sometime. Have me back if you want to. Maybe there should be such a thing as digital bubble space.
Oh yeah. No, I'm in a yes, I have that. I have not always had that. And again, I think I've been in places where again, people can't comprehend that like you can get along with everybody. You can like people more than others and get along with everybody, but some people are like, no, we all have to be best friends together. And I'm like, diversity, we're all kind of different. There's a difference between like, yeah, everybody knows they can come to me for help or vent or do whatever, but and I have better friends with some people, and I'm like, I don't need to hang out with everybody all the time on my free time. Like we work together. It's okay. It's okay. So
Good fences make good neighbors, right?
exactly. Like if I want you there, I'll let you know. But otherwise, just like woof, back it up. Like, nope. Icebreakers. Hate them. Despise.
I do not subject my staff to those anymore.
Look at you.
I'll
We
come work
decided
for you
our
then.
culture was a culture that does not embrace the art. And they're like, this will build your culture. Like, you know what would build our culture the most? Acknowledging that we actually don't like that.
Talking, finding a deeper level topic and talking about it, that'll let me know somebody a lot better than like,
Yeah.
if you who is one mentor? Like if you were a type of salad, what green would you be? Mm-mm.
So
I know.
what kind of salad would you be?
I don't know. I made it up. That was one. I can't even remember. I put
I
that
could just see you
PTSD out
being a
of my
salad
head.
of croutons. Lots of crust.
Yeah, I don't
Not
know.
easily permeated.
Crust.
The cheese that's still locked up in the
Yeah.
in the cooler, frozen,
You-
cold and dead, and just a shard like my heart. Just
Yeah.
nope.
Brittany, on the salad bar of life, you are the dusty carafe of croutons.
Yep. Yep. Full of carbs, hard to chew. Not really, can't really tell when it's there.
Not for
Oh,
everybody, but those who you
Not for
are, I
everybody. No.
mean, you are a must-have, a non-negotiable.
yeah. Everybody needs a Brittany crouton in their life. That's for sure. He needs a Brittany crouton. She's my Brittany crouton.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too.
I think your salad bar needs an upgrade. Like everybody's does. If I'm the star of the show, we've got a problem.
I
don't
feel
tell me what
most
to do
days
with my
like I'm the
salad bar.
sneeze guard.
You need an upgrade. You need to
Okay.
spice up your life.
This was exponentially, I didn't even think it was possible, exponentially more insightful than even I was anticipating. And I was super jazzy jazzed about this episode. So this has been chef's kiss. Don't you think, Brittany?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you for acknowledging it. So let's do our quick round robin if we're okay. It's tradition around here to do a quick round robin at the end of three things. First off, what are you reading? Brittany, are you still reading the same thing or did you move on to something else?
I have moved on. I actually have a stack of my books from the library right here. We'll pick Palo Alto, History of California Capitalism in the World. It's about the history of Silicon Valley.
Oh,
Then we're gonna go World War II fiction after that. So we'll get something light. Something
Ooh,
light.
like it. Like it.
Yeah.
I am still reading Medicare for All a Citizen's Guide as I was the last two times, and I'm waiting for another couple books about the healthcare system and medical debt to come from Amazon, which I am very excited about. So in addition to the one I talked about last week, I added another one into the cart. So that's my soapbox issue of my life is access, universal access to healthcare, if it isn't obvious by now. So Amanda, what are you reading if you have time for that in your life?
I just finished Isaac Storm, which is about the 1901 hurricane that hit Galveston, Texas, and was one of the most deadliest natural disasters in U.S. history. Great book. And um, picked up another book. I don't know the title of it. It's just a bunch of interviews of people who lived through the storm. Um, Probably called Galveston Voices. I'm going to say that's what the name of it is. It should be if it isn't.
It should be if it isn't. You're smarter than the author of the book. I get it.
I'm just into book branding.
I get it. I love
And
it.
I am still also working through Rent, which is about evictions in Milwaukee, a six-family case study from 2009.
That's a great book.
It
Fabulous.
really is.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Okay, I'm taking notes from you two, obviously. Big goal, big or small goal in near or long term that you're working on, you're gonna work on. Brittany was making it through the week the last couple times we talked. Brittany, how's that going? You got any new goals?
I'm here. So we did
Yeah,
it. Round of
good. Made
applause.
it.
Um, I think my goal for the next time is by next time, hopefully when we record, is to have gotten all my gardening stuff in order. So speaking of hobbies, where I should just be turned out to pasture, trying to be better at growing my own food. So now that I don't think it's gonna be terrible, 20-degree weather out anymore, jinx, jinx. Gonna have to go get all my soil and some of my starter plants and my seeds. I've got stuff somewhat germinating, I think, over there on the other side of the table. Plant my lettuce. So yeah, just trying to get my little starter pot set up.
For you, I gotta get my deck plants going. I got a cute little cat planter, metal cat planter. It kind of looks like Chester a little bit. My cat's name is Chester. So I gotta plant my plants too, but I did go for that run I mentioned, and so running more regularly is a goal. So I did go for a quick jog, which again to any bystander would have looked like a brisk power walk, but to me it was running. Yeah. Amanda, how about you? Goals?
Right now, because I'm in my mid 40s, every week my goal is to consume an appropriate amount of fiber. Um, so this week I have 2 bags of Power Blend in my office fridge. So my goal is to end the week and have both of them properly consumed. So I got one more day tomorrow, had one bag left. So lunch, snack, and breakfast are pretty
Love it.
green.
I
Yeah.
love it. Does that combine with water? Do you also have water goals since you have fiber goals?
I don't have a set number, but it is that basically whenever I am sedentary that I'm drinking, um, which is
Awesome.
a very bold decision for anyone in education because the question is, will I be able to, properly evacuate this from me? Will there be time and privacy?
Will there be time?
Time
There's
and
a quote.
privacy.
Will there be time and privacy?
Will there be time and privacy to attend to my basic bodily functions today? A memoir in public education by Amanda Zanchetti.
Smell a future book on the podcast.
I do. I smell it as
Hopefully be a
well.
visiting author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do occasionally swear on here, and it's in one of our last round robin questions. What's the dumbest shit you've seen in the news? Or just anything in the news that caught your eye. It doesn't have to be dumb. It doesn't have to be silly. It can just be what caught your eye in the news. Brittany, take it away.
I've actually just opened up Twitter because I'm like, oh yeah.
Brittany always goes to
So
Twitter.
I'll go with a lot this week. Because I know what happened with the score of the game. So we'll just say the Indiana Pacers being like, we're gonna win it all because we beat the Bucks without Giannis and without, with a team that's basically the equivalent of a bunch of fawns showing their bellies. So um I don't know, just that's a light. There have been some great memes coming out of that. So I'll keep it. I think I've been pretty heavy the last 2 weeks, so we'll spice it up. How about you, Cassie?
Look at you. Look at you thinking that you've been heavy the last 2 weeks. The news is very heavy, though, to
Called
quantify.
vacation. Just sort of meme in between the heavy things once in a
A
while
little
to
diversion.
pretend.
Yeah, I was pretty ridiculous the last two times. Talked about the Chicago rat hole and then, I don't know, things falling out of the sky another time. But I'm intrigued, I will say, by these brood cicadas thing that's happening. I, we've been through a pandemic recently. There's been a lot of crazy things that have happened. It's like, I don't really need here thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of big cicada bugs. So I'm kind of hoping that it stays in other states. But I'm intrigued by like this once in a lifetime insect thing, right? I
We
don't know.
could learn what the locust craze was of years past. We may
There
be
you go.
about to.
There you go.
Whole new protein source.
There you go. And
So
then Amanda can write a book about it in the future. It'd be like voices of the cicadas, but not actually
Voice,
like,
Voices of the Cicada, a
it is.
culinary journey.
yeah. There, see? That's your whole
Journey.
library.
A Weber, a cicada, and a dream. That will be my. Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh,
Ooh.
I'd
I thought
read
you were
that.
going to say those three walk into a bar.
Now I'm going to work on that. That's actually see if I can't make something happen out of that. At the very
I
least, a
mean,
haiku.
it's
I
a
think you should.
Hulu series at the least.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. Have you seen any what's caught your eye in the news? Serious, unserious, or otherwise?
This is embarrassing, but I am enjoying all of the news feeds that are carrying the antics of Ryan Gosling at the Fall Guy premieres. Um, I think he is. I've thought he was one of the funniest guys ever, and so I was Ryan Gosling fan before that was cool. I'm gonna point that out right now. But yeah, I'm enjoying him messing around with other stuntmen and showing up as Beavis and Butthead. I find no end in the joy he brings me. So
Cassie, I don't know if I should go get it. I'm looking over at my coffee table. Do you know what book
Are
is
you?
on my coffee table?
Oh, go get it. Oh, you have to now. She opened up the Ryan Gosling fountain. You might as well.
yeah, I
Come
went
on.
there and I'm not ashamed. I'll go there again.
No. Ryan Gosling. Oh,
Also wore shorts, also a good idea for this, because who could have
never
known? Who
know.
could have known I was gonna get
Who's
up and go?
gonna know I'm gonna stand up?
Right. Now has not always happened when I've, been sitting or working or whatever. But this is feminist Ryan Gosling. So this is actually written by um someone who went to UW-Madison for grad school in women's studies to I think she used to make these memes as a way to help study feminist theory. And then it
Yeah.
used to be on a blog on I think Tumblr, because back in the day, Tumblr, and then she turned it into a book. So it's feminist theory as imagined from your favorite sensitive movie date. So there are all kinds of it's all just pictures of him that then it's like,
Hey, girl.
hey
Hmm.
girl memes. So Cassie, I'm trying to find your
Yeah.
favorite.
Give me my favorite one.
I'm trying to find your favorite one.
There's a photo of me lurking out in old Facebook land where I'm opening this and I'm in my parents' living room with Brittany and I'm cackling uproariously at whatever one I've found and I use it as my profile picture for a few months.
I've got it
So
printed out on my fridge. Like,
yeah. Yeah, you're sick.
oh, I
You're a
think
sick person.
it is. Well, it's amazing.
It's the greatest book. I love Ryan Gosling. And I loved the foreshadowing on him, like this feminist Ryan Gosling book, and then Barbie, later in his career.
A colleague of mine is quite the fan of feminist Ryan Gosling and has gifted me with many memes. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes you just need Ryan Gosling to say, "Hey, girl."
Which one is it,
Hey
Brittany?
girl. Hey girl. My eyes are up here.
Oh yeah. Yes. That's exactly how we needed to end this episode. That right there, the Ryan Gosling Hey Girl meme coffee table book. Hey girl, my eyes are up here.
Shout out to Danielle Henderson, the author.
Super important
Unauthorized, she
reminder.
would like you to know this. So Ryan Gosling, I do not believe, has sanctioned this, but maybe we could approach him.
If you take a look on YouTube, there's a thing with Russell Crowe having an intervention with him talking about that very work.
Just
Wow.
do Lord's work.
That's how you know you've made it.
That-
Mhm.
Okay. I got tears in my eyes. I love this podcast. I love that you were our first guest. I can't tell you how much I love that Amanda was our first guest.
It can only go up from here, girls.
No, I was say, speaking of perfectionism, everybody after this, it's like the oldest child that went through and set the expectation, and then you tell your younger siblings, you're welcome, that all the teachers are gonna like you. And now maybe a small part of them is like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to live up to the first one going through. Like, way to
Mm-hmm.
do way to do it. Way to if at the end of it's only fitting at the end of a discussion on perfectionism for you to have set the bar so high that I hope every other guest gets in just immeasurable anxiety from
Yeah,
trying to
this is
Yeah.
your Sergeant Pepper's right here.
yes. If this
Yes.
was
Yes.
a high jump bar, everyone's just gonna, try, but maybe just kind of clear under, just somersault under it, which is still gonna be fine, but
Yeah.
absolutely cracking 11 out of 10.
Just
Yeah.
so again, grateful to get to spend some time with you both and see you in all your adult glory and
That was actually an alternate name for the podcast.
adult glory. Yeah.
Oh, you're
And let
adult
me
boy.
assure you, wherever you are in your life right now, it's only gonna get weirder, and that can be good and bad. For me, it's majority of that has been a good thing. So uh yeah,
Love
I
that.
remember 35 and 36. I tell you what, I 46 has been a blast. I'm glad I get to see you now. I can't wait to see you when you're sitting at this age and hear where you're at in the snarking lot and what else is new.
Don't mind me. I'm just wiping away my snarking lot tears. Snarkers in the Snarkiverse, thank you for helping us welcome Amanda to this podcast. I know that you're giving her a round of applause for her presence. So thanks, Snarkers. Brittany, want to give us your classic sign off, please?
Everyone, always bring logic to a dumb fight.
See you soon, Snarkers.
Bye.
Bye.